Welcome to my podcast, Love and Courageous. I'm the host, Demetrius, and on today's episode, I'll be speaking about the Department of Education. So, as everyone knows, that Donald Trump is trying to dismantle the Department of Education. So, I'm going to get into what the Department of Education is and what exactly it do. So, the Department of Education was created back in 1979 under President Jimmy Carter. The Education Department disperses Title I funds to elementary and secondary schools with large, low-income student enrollments that collect data on schools, oversees the recognition of accrediting agencies and programs that support higher education institutions, also protects students against racial and sex-based discrimination, and manages student financial aid assistance programs, including loans and grants. Now, however, even though Donald Trump is talking about getting rid of the Department of Education, it does have to go through Congress, which consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate. So, just in case anybody don't know, the Republicans have full control. So, they have control of the House and the Senate. So, Donald Trump planned by dismantling the Department of Education is by sending it back to the states. Dismantling means defunding programs that educate and feed and also protect the most vulnerable and underserved students. I'm going to list a few programs that will be impacted that helps people. So one is the Individuals with Disability and Education Act, also known as IDEA. Roughly 7.5 million students, which make up 15% of the student population, receive special education, which provides $15 billion to support students with disabilities. Now, how it normally works is that the federal government gives money to states based on a formula that factors in the number of students with disabilities. States then distribute that money to local school districts to provide special education services to eligible students, with the expectation that states will also contribute their own money to cover the full cost of services. About 12 or 13% of the money used for students with special needs come through federal IDEA funding. If the Department of Education is dissolved, this money could go to the states as block grants, but the federal accountability for compliance would disappear. In other words, it means that the school districts will be responsible for using that money however they choose. Another program that would be hurt the most is Title I, which directs money to schools with high concentrations of students living in poverty and provides support such as reading specialists and smaller class sizes. Now, the same thing would happen with Title I. The funding would move to block grants if the Department of Education was dismantled. Now, this will lead to a result in difficult transition with significant confusion at the state and district levels, resulting in delays or failures in getting money where it should go. This could hurt test scores, graduation rates, attendance, students' behavior, and engagement. And also, according to analysis by the Center for American Progress, as the Department of Education was to be dismantled, 180,000 teaching positions could be lost, affecting 2.8 million students in low-income communities. Also, the White House is trying to move the Education Department Office for Civil Rights to the Department of Justice. The Education Department Office of Civil Rights enforces federal laws against discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, disability, or national origin in schools. Now, however, with Donald Trump trying to dismantle the Department of Education, here is how this will impact the Education Department Office of Civil Rights. One, it will require parents to have the resources to pursue litigation to resolve any complaints. That will create a lot of more challenges for families to address concerns and complaints about civil rights. The absence of a strong federal oversight would leave millions of students vulnerable to discrimination, leading to lower levels of motivation, academic achievement, and a higher risk of dropping out. The last thing is the Education Department also administers Pell Grants, federal student loans, loan repayment, and forgiveness programs. So the federal aid programs will be overseen by another federal agency or be dispersed to states. Federal student loans may be moved to the U.S. Department of the Treasury or shifted to private for-profit organizations. Now, Pell Grants, which are federal awards based on financial need, are unlikely to be affected, but the new Congress may vote to slash funding for federal college access initiatives, such as work study or public service loan forgiveness. Students could lose support, and also this could lead to students dropping out. Now, with all this being said, Donald Trump and Elon Musk has threatened the education department and told them they will not receive funding if they do not cut the DEI programs. Elon Musk, Department of Government Efficiency, and Department of Education put state education departments on notice on Friday, threatening to revoke federal funding for public schools and universities unless they remove all diversity, equity, and inclusion programming within 14 days. The Department of Education, whose nominee to lead the agency is Linda McMahon, has not yet to be confirmed, but is also a target for drastic reductions or complete elimination, as Donald Trump seeks to put the education regulation back to the state level. The letter penned by the Department of Education, Acting Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, emphasizes the legal non-discrimination requirements for schools that receive federal assistance and bases much of its legal argument on a Supreme Court case where Harvard University was sued over its affirmative action policies. The court ruled that using racial preferences in college admissions is illegal, and the letter argues it sets forth a framework and applies more broadly. Secretary Craig Trainer wrote in a letter stating, I quote, "The law is clear, treating students differently on the basis of race to achieve nebulous goals such as diversity, racial balancing, social justice, or equity is illegal under controlling Supreme Court precedent." But this is not the only thing that Donald Trump has done. He has moved to end indoctrination in kindergarten to 12th grade education and block federal funding for schools that include gender ideology and critical race theory in the classroom. Also, the department has slashed 70 DEI training grants, according to Doge on X. But that is all the information that I have. Honestly, all I can say is that it would not surprise me if they pass this, considering the fact that the Republicans have full control over Congress. And I can already see where this is going. It's going to go right back to where it went when schools were segregated and stuff, which I'm not even trying to be funny. I feel like, you know what, the black community, we need to focus on our own. Now, however, of course, the HBCUs are going to be defunded, which this is where hopefully, you know, the black celebrities step up and put some money towards. Also, some of us other black people, you know, we don't have as much as them, but every little bit counts, and do what we can do to help our own community. But the thing is this, though, a lot of these Trump supporters, they laughing about this, but they don't realize they people have disabilities. Their people are going to struggle as well because they act like they all got money. No, a lot of them are poor. So they going to get hit hard with this. And you know what? That's fine. But that is all for today. And now I'm going to get into the Black History Fact for today. So the Black History Fact for today will be about Mississippi, the state that has finally abolished slavery in 2013. After failing for 130 years to ratify the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, except as punishment for crime, the state of Mississippi finally ratified the 13th Amendment on March 16, 1995. Soon after the Confederacy defeat in the Civil War, the 13th Amendment was designed to abolish slavery nationwide. The text of the amendment reads, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." After Congress passed the amendment on January 31st, 1865, three-fourths of the states, which is a 27 out of 36 vote, needed to ratify it before it could become part of the Constitution. Mississippi economy was built on slavery, and the state had the largest enslaved population in America at the start of the Civil War. On December the 5th of 1865, the state legislature voted against ratification, becoming one of several southern states that refused to endorse the 13th Amendment. Ultimately, the amendment received enough votes from other states so that it was ratified the following day, despite Mississippi opposition to the end of enslavement. Almost 130 years later, in 1994, a clerk in the Texas legislature named Gregory Watson discovered that Mississippi still had not ratified the 13th Amendment. He notified each of the black members of the Mississippi legislature and sent them a draft of a resolution that Mississippi could adopt in order to rectify the situation. On March the 16th of the next year, Mississippi legislature reached a largely symbolic vote to unanimously ratify the abolition of slavery in America, becoming the last of the eligible states to do so. After the vote, however, Mississippi state officials failed to send the necessary documentation to the Federal Register, so the ratification was not formally filed as required. Nearly 20 years later, in late 2012, two Mississippi residents discovered that the ratification was not yet official and notified the Secretary of State. Several weeks later, the required paperwork was filed, and Mississippi ratification of the 13th Amendment was legally recorded on February the 7th of 2013. That is all for today. And for my next episode, I will be speaking about the federal workers. So all the federal workers in each department, like the nuclear workers and the CDC and stuff, because there's a lot going on with them. So that would be my next topic for my next episode. But thank you everyone for listening to my podcast, and I hope y'all have a lovely day.